And hopefully I'm signed in. Oh, I am. Okay. So 2 homeworks due next week. You already have all of the material. We've already covered all the material for the 2 homeworks due next week. So if you have some free time this weekend or sometime later in the week, I recommend starting homework 9 and homework 10. Tyler Shepard, Martin, and Nicholas Arnold. Okay, so we're just down to a couple people missing. Okay, so we got 3 homeworks really fast. The good news is they're after this exam, after homework 11's due, there's only 1 more homework due for the entire semester, and that's like a month away. So we're getting all the MOSFET stuff done early. Everything you need to do homework 9 and 10 is we've already covered. Homework 11 will be stuff that we're going to cover. What is today? It's Wednesday. We'll cover next week. Okay. Homework 9 is all digital, and homework 10 is calculating currents in MOSFETs and telling me what operating region they're in. So it's nothing like 380. We're going to start, we started lab 5 today. I forgot to come to lab. I'm sorry, I just completely forgot I had lab until like about noon. So that's okay, Vinod Vinod took care of you. I'm just usually in the background anyways. Lab 4 is due this Friday. And lab 5 is a 2-week lab. Our next exam is Wednesday, April 7th in Frankie 436. If you want to take it remotely, just send me an email. I think about 2 people have signed up so far. It's not like 380 where 2 people signed up all together, and I'm expecting everybody in the classroom tomorrow. We will see. Either that or they've decided they have to give up on 380. It's really not that bad. This is the MOS planar transistor. This is what's in Zedra Smith, and it's still a valid model from a circuit designer's perspective, as most of you will probably go out and become test engineers or start out in app engineering. Pretty much the current voltage characteristics, the small signal models, the capacitors we'll talk about, and the body effect that we'll talk about in EE280, they're pretty much the same, except for the numbers are a little bit different for MOS planar transistors. A couple of other things have been updated too since Zedra decided to the last look at the world. The oxide that they use in Zedra Smith is silicon dioxide, which has a relative dielectric strength of 3.9. For the past 10 years, until maybe about 6 months ago, the oxide that most people use was nitrided hafnium silicate. Usually people just call it hafnium because it's too long to say that. It has a relative dielectric strength of 20. You need the higher dielectric strength because the oxides are getting thinner and thinner, only about 10 atoms across. And to keep current from going through this 10 atom layer, you need a higher K. And this is getting so thin now in the past 6 months to a year. These rare earth oxides, which have an epsilon relative around 40, are going into early production. The length in the state-of-the-art processes from TSMC and Samsung is 5 nanometers. Intel is working on it. I think they're close to a breakthrough, but Samsung is already working on 3 nanometers, and so is TSMC. It's an early test production stage. The 1 nanometer is in development. So they're going through and they're testing out different transistor structures, trying to figure out what's the most reliable and what they can make. This number for previous generations, it just keeps going down and down and down and down and down. About when 2007, we were about at 0.4 micrometers. 1990, we hit the first 1 micrometer less than 1 micrometer transistor. And so it just seems to keep going down faster and faster. I think there's limits to the MOSFET technology. Like right now, TOX of 10 angstroms, which is exactly 1 nanometer. That's only about 10 atoms thick. Not really enough. You know, 1 atom moving a little bit makes the whole thing change. The precision that's required on this is unbelievable. There are some possibilities for what we could do in the future. One of them involves ReRAM. But for right now, we're still using MOS. No one's going to go beyond that. So this is a FinFET. It's last year's MOS technology. So instead of building this planar structure here, where I've got the drain and the source and the gate on top, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the channel. I'm going to take, this is the channel right here, the thing that's labeled L, and I'm going to flip it on its side. And when I do that, I get this structure here. So I flip this up on its side, and I can put the gate on 3 sides of the channel. And I can regulate the channel current so much better. The channel current goes from drain to source, flowing through this way, that it is, for a long time, as transistors got smaller and smaller, they got to be less and less ideal. The ROs got worse, the leakage currents got worse. As soon as they switched to FinFETs, all that stuff got way better. So it was worth it to do FinFETs. And this has been going on for about 5 years. This has been the standard technology in these small processes. Now, what they're pushing now is, this was the first idea, and this was last year's idea of how we got even smaller, is the logical conclusion to a FinFET is if 3 sides is better, 4 sides of control on the gate is even better yet. So they call these nanowires. So or gate all around. You've got this really thin layer in here. You can make this down, the theory was down to about 1 nanometer. And if you needed more current through the device, you just stack transistors on top of each other. Well, Samsung tried that in their testing phase and found out it didn't work so well. So this is what they're using now. It's called the nano sheet. It's a slightly wider version of the nanowire. And this is the best picture I could find of it. So instead of making these square, we make them rectangular. Still, the key dimension here isn't how wide these things are. The key dimension to hitting 1 nanometer is how long this gate is. 1 nanometer. As long as I can get that dimension longer, I don't care if I have to make the transistors a little bit wider or make that shorter. Kind of cheating, but again, you can stack them on top of each other too, so that makes the density a little bit higher. Yes, motivation, it's what helps you succeed. Find something that motivates you, otherwise life is dull. See, what motivates me this time of the year is just kicking back and watching the seniors panic. It's my hobby. I got a job, just pass me. Or my capstone won't work. So we're going to go through the CMOS Digital 2. I may go through, if I have time, I'll go through at the end and review some of the MOS analog stuff. And then we'll go into MOS analog next week, and then we'll have the exam reviewed right after that. So the thing that we do is we build these circuits on a wafer, and for some reason they've always been round. There is a company that has come up with this brilliant idea of making wafers square. When we put the ICs on here, we put these tiny little squares in a grid to fill this up. And of course, there's wasted space on the edge because it's round. The cost of running a wafer through and building this is fixed. It doesn't matter how many little squares I put in there, and each little square represents a device that I can sell to the customer. So if I can pack more squares on this device, I can sell more units to the customer and make more of a profit off of this single wafer. So we want the circuits to be as small as they possibly can. Generally, so our general rule is we use the smallest transistors we can that will meet our performance criterion, called the specs. So whatever my specs are going to determine how big I have to make the transistors. Now, most of the performance parameters for a transistor depend upon the ratio of W to L, the W over L. So I want W over L to be big. So in almost every circumstance, but one weird little analog thing, I use the minimum L. Almost always. And I make W bigger if I need it to be. This is really the only thing you control most of the time. And I just froze. And I will be back. We're on slide 8. I know, it actually in the recordings, it shows up with me moving around right now. But I can't see anything and I can't advance my slides. So I'll be back.